your city and the city council rejected unanimously the deal with the Department of Justice, and this week you agreed to it unanimously. What happened?
So, in fairness, when we rejected it, as many people have put it, we actually agreed to the deal with some changes.
Okay.
We had some serious concerns about some cost-related issues. The amendments that we passed, we felt weren't substantively changing the reform process, but what it did was give us the financial ability to be able to meet the terms of the agreement. Since that time, obviously we know the Justice Department sued us because they didn't like us amending the agreement.
Right.
But they did provide to us in writing, which we felt was sufficient to move forward, some clarification on some of the cost issues. And so with that in writing and with those clarifications made, we now think that we're in a position to be able to financially move forward on these reforms.
So they clarified, saying that it wasn't as expensive as you thought it was going to be to meet all of their standards.
Sure. Obviously, the agreement's full of legalese, and so when you start having attorneys interpret what parts of that agreement mean,
right?
We had some very serious concerns about what we might be on the hook for financially. So with those cost concerns met, we feel that it's a prudent decision to go ahead and move forward and institute these reforms.
Okay. Now, your city is running a deficit. These are going to cost some more money.
That's true.
So you said that there's going to be a tax increase on the ballot coming up.
Right. I mean, either fighting this consent decree or moving forward in agreement with the consent decree, it's going to cost money.
Right.
We already do, as you mentioned, have a systemic budget deficit. One way or the other, the citizens of Ferguson, if they expect to continue to have the level of service that we provide, are going to have to say yes to these tax increases. One is a sales tax, which I know that many residents prefer because everybody who shops in Ferguson gets to share in the pain,
right,
as opposed to just residents. And then there's the property tax, which, of course, every landowner in Ferguson is going to have to pay a nominal addition to their property tax bill.
Now, this is going to be on the ballot in April?
It is. It's on the ballot in a few weeks.
And if this doesn't pass, what happens?
If neither one of them pass, we're looking at up to a 25% cut in our staffing, most of which will have to come from public safety. 75% of our general fund budget, which is where the deficit is, comes from police and fire. And so it should be concerning to all residents. If you want police on the streets, for those who support the reforms of the consent decree, if you want us to be able to have the oversight necessary as required by the consent decree, we're going to have that tax increase.
Is this a vote coming up on whether or not the residents want to continue to have Ferguson to be a quote-unquote town?
Well, no, because, right now, if you look at Ferguson as compared to many other communities, we provide, a much higher level of service than many others. We can cut things back to the bare bones. I think at that point people might question, should you even be a city if you're barely providing the services that we expect.
Right.
But people live in a community or a city because they expect to have a level of service that they're not going to get in the unincorporated areas. And so many times over the years, Ferguson residents have supported parks taxes to increase our funds for funding our community center, our pool. Mm-hmm. We've had people support increased taxes to pay for new firehouses. That's what's required in order to make sure that you have the level of service that you want, and this is the decision that residents will make in April.
I know you haven't been polling this, but anecdotally, what are you hearing from the people in Ferguson? Do you think there's a good chance this will pass?
Well, I'll tell you what, the consent decree was a very divisive issue, and so getting that behind us, whether or not we're in court or this money is going to go to fighting something in court, getting that issue behind us was very important. We had people working all day on Tuesday during the presidential preference primary, working the polls, handing out information as people left. By and large, it was a very good reception. There were people who begrudgingly support it.
Right.
Nobody wants to pay more money.
Right.
But people also don't want to hear that law enforcement and public safety is going to be cut.
Yeah.
And so I believe that at least the sales tax should pass probably pretty easily. The property tax has to pass with a 66% majority, which is quite a threshold. So I'm a little concerned about that, but
right.
the residents in Ferguson continue every time we've asked to rise to the occasion, and I think they will at this time.
And you are supporting both. You are encouraging your residents to vote in favor of both of these.
Absolutely, and I've spoken to people who are on both sides of the issue of the consent decree, in many living rooms across Ferguson, in churches and community groups, to talk to them about what this really means. This isn't about what side you're on,
right,
what divide, where the divide is or was in the community. This is about coming together and the things that we all hold dear.
Getting sued by your federal government is always an interesting place to be in. James Knowles, mayor of Ferguson. The last time you were here, I still can't believe an answer to a question. I'm going to ask you it again. Since you were being sued by the federal government, did the Attorney General of the state talk to you at all, and did the governor of the state talk to you at all about it?
No.
No, nothing. Not even a hey, if you have any questions, give us a call. Nothing.
No.
All right.
And I will say this though, yesterday I signed before it was filed in court, I'm the one that signed on behalf of the city for the agreement.
Yeah.
And it's nothing like seeing in writing the United States of America versus you.
Well, it wasn't you per se, or was it you per se?
Well, it was the city of Ferguson represented by me.
Right, yeah.
So.
But you would think at least the Attorney General or the governor would at least have a conversation with you and say, how's it going? Boy, right? I mean, but nothing. No.
I think it's interesting that the Attorney General hasn't really weighed in on a lot of the issues that we've now talked about, our regional issues with regional courts. Our Missouri State Supreme Court has looked at things like the municipal court issues. And now we have, if you saw the other day, the Department of Justice sent to every Supreme Court in the United States essentially a warning saying, we know that you guys are doing things similar to what we saw in Ferguson. You better stop or we're coming to you next.
Right. And this Attorney General is running for governor. So you would think he would have some interest in this.
Or hide from it.
All right. Now, lastly, before we let you go, there was a really interesting picture. We talked about it on the show, and that is you shaking hands with Michael Brown's father. Mm-hmm. And if a picture is worth 1,000 words, that's 1,000 words. Tell us about how that picture came to be.
So Mr. Brown came the last time we voted on it, and he came this time as well to see the outcome, obviously, the vote. I was actually speaking to a reporter when I saw him come up toward the dais and motion toward me. I'd actually met him before. Mm-hmm. We actually had a few conversations, very heartfelt conversations last year, completely out of the cameras, out of the limelight.
Right.
So we'd had a connection before, and I came over, obviously shook hands, embraced, and I hope that as a community we're all moving forward. I hope that Mr. Brown and his family, I know he's trying to do some positive things with young people in the community. I hope that we can all come together and move forward on those issues. It's a really frustrating, I will say, Don Lemon and CNN actually was at our first meeting. They came in as I was leaving. CNN filmed quite a bit, actually, of he and I together. Never aired any of that.
Really?
That was over a year ago.
Yeah.
That was December of 2014.
The look on your face, and I don't want to put words into your mouth or words into his mouth or words into your look, but there was a mutual respect that the both of you gave to each other, saying, history brought us together, and I understand you, you understand me, and together the legacy of my son looks like it might be positive. It's been tough getting here, but it looks like more positive is going to come out of this than negative.
Well, I think that what helped, again, was, Mr. Brown and I both were able to sit down and talk man to man before, understand, I think, what's in each of our hearts. Mm. And so, it wasn't just the first time I meet a guy across the room, and just happened to shake hands. I mean, I think there's already
an underlying
respect.
trust there. Yeah.
There was, and I think there's a mutual understanding and respect a little bit beforehand. And like I said, I think that going forward, I hope that people all recognize that, he and I are sincerely working to move together forward, and I hope that others would too.
James Knowles, I hope you continue on in politics, because you're one of the few that actually answers questions and is heartfelt and doesn't shy away from the tough questions and the tough issues. Mayor of Ferguson, James Knowles, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, McGraw.
852, Big 550, KTRS.